I have always been a very practical person. When I decided to move into a new house, newly built in a quiet neighborhood, I was excited. It was the perfect place to start a new chapter in life. The streets were silent, the neighbors barely appeared, and everything seemed exactly as I had dreamed. It was as if I had finally found a refuge to rest after years of living amidst the chaos of the city. Oh, if only I knew how things would change. On the first night, I kept myself busy unpacking boxes and arranging the furniture, feeling comfortable with the smell of fresh paint and the impeccably clean environment. It was late by the time I finished, and exhausted, I decided to rest on the couch. While watching some meaningless program, I felt the weight of exhaustion envelop me, until I heard a sound that suddenly pulled me out of that comfort. The intercom rang. I thought it was strange for someone to show up so late, especially because I didn't know anyone there. I got up slowly, a little suspicious, and walked to the intercom panel. The screen showed the view of the house's main entrance, but there was no one there. I pressed the button and asked, hesitantly, "Hello? Who's there?" There was a brief silence, and then I heard a soft, feminine voice, something between a whisper and a lament. "May I come in?" The question echoed in my ears in a strange way. My spine froze for a moment, but soon I rationalized the situation. Maybe it was a lost neighbor, someone trying to scare me as a joke, or even a line error. I paused, observed the screen once more, and since there was no one there, I replied, "I think you have the wrong address." The voice said nothing more. I went back to the couch, but something in me wouldn't let me fully relax. The way the voice had sounded, it was as if it had penetrated directly into my thoughts, carrying with it a dark and disturbing weight. I tried to ignore it, but an uncomfortable feeling persisted, a tingling in my neck, as if I was being watched. Later, when I finally dragged myself to bed, the sounds of the house seemed louder than they should. Creaking, muffled whispers, wind hitting the windows. I was too tired to think too much about it, and ended up falling asleep. The next night, while preparing dinner, the intercom rang again. A long, sharp ring that seemed to echo throughout the entire house, once again bringing that feeling of discomfort. I went to the panel, and just like the night before, there was no one there. I leaned closer to the camera, trying to understand what was happening. I pressed the button and asked, with a certain tone of irritation, "Who is it?" This time, the answer came almost immediately, but something had changed. The same feminine voice, but closer, as if it was just on the other side of the door, said, "I'm already inside." My heart raced. I quickly looked around, my mind trying to rationalize, searching for some sense. It must be a mistake, or maybe some issue with the system, I thought. I took a deep breath and went back to my routine, but the idea that someone could be inside, that I wasn't alone, wouldn't let me rest. I decided to take a walk around the house, checking every door and window. Everything was locked. I tried to laugh at the situation, as if laughing could dissipate that irrational fear, until I heard a low sound, something scratching, coming from the hallway. My entire body shivered, and I felt a chill run down my spine. Slowly, I walked down the dark hallway, the cold wood of the floor creaking under my feet. The scratching sound continued, almost as if someone was running their nails along the wall. The closer I got to the end of the hallway, the louder the sound became, until suddenly everything stopped. Absolute silence. There was nothing there, just the darkness and the oppressive feeling that something was wrong. Back in the bedroom, I tried to convince myself that it was just a mix of tiredness and imagination. I closed my eyes and wrapped myself in the blankets, until the intercom rang again, now with an insistent, almost desperate ring. My heart felt like it was about to jump out of my chest. When I answered, before I could even say anything, I heard the voice. This time, there was no longer any delicacy or softness. It was a furious, dry whisper. "I'm right behind you." The adrenaline exploded in my body. I turned sharply, but there was nothing there. The room was empty, the door slightly ajar. My heart was pounding so fast that each beat seemed to echo in my ears. I walked to the door, trying to calm my breathing, and closed it with force. I spent the rest of the night sitting on the bed, staring at the bedroom door, waiting for any sign of movement. When the day finally broke, I tried to convince myself that I needed to seek help. Maybe a technician, an electrician, anything that could bring some logic to what was happening. On the third day, I disconnected the intercom. I simply unplugged it, determined not to hear any more of that. The house was quiet, and for a moment, I thought things might return to normal. But then, that same night, I heard the voice again. It didn't come from the disconnected intercom. It was no longer contained in that device. Now it was inside my house, echoing through the hallways. "I'm here." The sound came from all directions and seemed to move from room to room. I felt despair take over, tears streaming down my face as I dragged myself to the exit, trying to escape it. When I crossed the front door, I turned for an instant to look back, and there was the figure of a woman, pale, standing at the foot of the stairs, watching me. Her eyes were empty, and her smile was cold and disconnected from reality. I ran down the street without looking back. I never returned to that house. The only thing I know is that it remains there, empty, waiting for someone who doesn't know what they are about to find. I always believed that moving to a new house would be the solution to my family's problems. We needed space, a fresh start, and this house seemed perfect. It was spacious, airy, newly built. The kind of house where you'd expect a child's laughter to echo through the walls, making the environment warm and full of life. But that's not how things happened. Not in that house. From day one, something felt off. At first, I thought it was just the impact of being in an unfamiliar environment, the discomfort everyone feels when moving. My 5-year-old son, Pedro, had always been a cheerful, energetic child, but he started changing the moment we stepped into that place. He became quieter, distant. Initially, I thought it was just him adjusting to a new environment, away from friends and the neighborhood he knew. But after a few days, I noticed he was avoiding a specific room in the house, his own bedroom. "I don't like that closet, Daddy," he said one night, his voice filled with an innocence that made me laugh. "It's just a closet, son. There's nothing to be afraid of," I replied, trying to reassure him. But he was convinced otherwise. He began refusing to enter the room alone. Whenever we left him there, he would run back to the living room, pale and trembling. Then he started talking about the boy in the closet. The first time he mentioned it, I didn't take it seriously. I thought it was just the imagination of a child who had watched too many monster movies. "He stays in there, Daddy, and he's always sad. He cries at night," Pedro said, his eyes fixed on the floor. His fear seemed real, but my practical mind tried to rationalize it. I believed it was just a phase, something that would pass soon. But that night, things changed. I was lying in bed, trying to relax after a long, tiring day, when I heard a strange sound coming from Pedro's room. It was a soft sobbing, like a child crying. My first thought was that my son was having a nightmare. I quickly got up and went to his room. When I entered, The room was empty, except for the closet, which was slightly ajar. The sound, however, wasn't coming from the bed. It was coming from inside the closet. Fear struck me like a blow, a chill running through my entire body. I took a deep breath and walked toward the closet, trying to convince myself that this was impossible, that it had to be my imagination. I opened the door slowly, and for an instant the crying stopped. Inside, there were only Pedro's toys, piled up haphazardly. I tried to let it go. I told Pedro there was nothing there, that he didn't need to be afraid. But in the days that followed, things only got worse. Pedro started waking up in the middle of the night, screaming, saying the boy in the closet was angry, that he was mad because we didn't want to help him. Pedro's screams echoed through the house, and the terror in my son's eyes was so genuine that it could no longer be ignored. One night, exhausted and not knowing what else to do, I decided to sleep in the room with him. I put a mattress on the floor and lay down beside his bed. In the middle of the night, I woke up to the sound of something dragging, a sound that seemed to come directly from inside the closet. My eyes opened suddenly, and I saw that the closet door was open. Something inside was moving. With my heart pounding in my throat, I got up and walked toward the closet. The closer I got, the louder the sound became, as if something or someone was trying to get out of there. With trembling hands, I pulled the door open all at once. Nothing, only dark emptiness. But at that moment, I felt a supernatural cold emanating from the back of the closet, a chill that overtook me and made me step back. The next morning, I talked to my wife about everything. We decided to move Pedro out of that room. We turned it into a guest room and moved Pedro to one of the other rooms in the house. For a few days, everything seemed fine, as if we had solved the problem. But then, one early morning, I woke up to a noise coming from Pedro's old room. It was the sound of something knocking, insistent, like someone was trapped and trying to get out. I grabbed a flashlight and walked toward the room. The sound got louder as I approached. When I reached the door, I felt the temperature had dropped drastically. I slowly opened the door and shone the light into the room. The closet door was wide open, lightly banging against the wall with a wind that didn't exist. And then I saw it. A small, indistinct shadow that seemed to hide deeper into the closet when the light reached it. Terror gripped me, and for the first time since we moved in, I thought about leaving that house. But something in me, perhaps pride or disbelief, kept me from acting immediately. I tried to rationalize, find a logical explanation. I closed the door to the room and went to sleep on the couch, trying to forget what I had seen. It was the next night that the worst happened. Pedro woke up screaming, but this time he wasn't in the new room. We ran there, only to find him standing in the hallway, pointing towards his old room, tears streaming down his face, his whole body shaking. He couldn't speak, just pointed, as if he didn't have the strength to describe what he saw. I walked toward the room with Pedro clinging to my side. When I opened the door, I saw what I never thought possible. In the back of the closet, there was a figure, a child, pale with dark, sunken eyes. His lips were moving, but no sound came out, as if he were begging for help but was imprisoned by something we couldn't understand. His presence emanated such intense despair that my instinct was to close the door immediately. I called my wife and we decided right then and there that we needed to leave that house. We left everything behind, took Pedro and left, never to return. The house still stands, empty, and I have no idea what really happened or what was inside that closet. The only thing I know is that every time I close my eyes, I see that child's face, his empty eyes, and hear the sobs that echo in my nightmares, as if he were still there, waiting for someone to free him. I was never the kind of person who believed in supernatural things. When we bought the new house, a modern, freshly finished construction, I was excited. Every detail had been planned to be comfortable, technological, the perfect environment for my family. It was a dream house with all the amenities we could imagine, including a huge TV in the living room, the cherry on top for movie nights and relaxation. But I never imagined that this TV would become the center of my worst nightmares. Everything seemed perfect in the first few days. The house was modern and functional, with an automation system that allowed us to control lights, cameras, and even the TV by voice commands. It was the kind of technology one always admired. However, on the third night, things began to take a turn I could never have predicted. I was sitting on the couch, finishing organizing some boxes, when the TV simply turned on by itself. At first, I thought it was a system glitch, perhaps some voice command that was misunderstood. The screen flickered, and for a moment, there was only static. I stared at that flickering image, and before I could reach for the remote, the screen changed to show a live image of the living room. It was a live broadcast of the very room I was in. For a moment, I was confused. Perhaps a camera from the security system had somehow connected to the TV. But as I looked more closely, I noticed something that made my stomach churn. The living room being shown was the same, but not exactly identical. In the corner of the screen, there was a figure, an indistinct, hooded figure, watching the couch where I was sitting. I turned my head, startled, and of course, there was no one there. My heart started to beat faster. I grabbed the remote and turned off the TV, trying to dismiss it as a bizarre system error. But the image of that figure wouldn't leave my mind. Maybe it was just a glitch with the camera or a strange reflection. The next night, everything was normal until around midnight, when the TV turned on again, abruptly on its own. The image that appeared wasn't static this time. It was a scene that seemed to be recorded in the dark, with an unsteady camera showing the hallway of my house. My hallway. The camera moved slowly, as if someone was walking, each step echoing softly through the sound system. I stood up, feeling my whole body shiver. I walked to the hallway, my stomach churning with anxiety. It was empty, of course, but the sound from the TV continued, slow steps echoing and resonating through the environment. When I returned to the living room and looked at the screen, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The camera on the screen was approaching the doorway to the living room. I could see the door frame on the screen, and something or someone was approaching. On impulse, I turned off the TV again. But even with the screen dark, the sound of the steps seemed to echo for a few more seconds, like an aftereffect of what I had just witnessed. That night, I couldn't sleep at all. I lay in bed, trying to rationalize, trying to convince myself that it was all just a technical glitch. But a part of me knew there was something deeper and more sinister going on. On the third day, I decided to unplug the TV. If there was some problem with the system, at least it wouldn't happen if it had no power, right? So I pulled the plug out of the wall and stood there, watching, waiting for any kind of reaction. The room remained silent, only the distant sound of cars passing by on the street. For a few hours, everything seemed fine, as if I had finally taken control of the situation. But in the middle of the night, I was awakened by a glow coming from the living room. I got up, my heart already pounding, and when I got there, my blood froze. The TV was on, even though it was unplugged. The same scene was being broadcast, the camera moving slowly through the rooms of the house, as if someone was exploring every detail. This time, the image showed the hallway leading to the bedrooms. I stood there, paralyzed for a moment, unable to process what I was seeing. How could that TV be on if there was no power? And who had the camera? My mind was spinning, while the image slowly moved down the hallway, approaching the door of the bedroom where my wife was still sleeping. In a desperate panic, I ran to the bedroom, locking the door behind me. I woke my wife up, trying to explain what was happening, but everything seemed so surreal that she just looked at me, confused and scared. Then, suddenly, the sound of footsteps came from the hallway, this time not from the TV, but there, physically, just outside the room. The footsteps were slow, heavy, approaching the bedroom door. My wife held my hand, her eyes wide with fear. Each beat of my heart was like a drum in my ears. There was nothing I could do, nothing that could explain what was happening. We stayed there, waiting, while the footsteps stopped right outside the door. An eerie silence followed. I could hear my own breathing, rapid and uneven, and the sound of my wife's breathing beside me. Then, something touched the door, a faint scratching, like nails brushing against the wood. It was a subtle sound, but enough to terrify me completely. I grabbed my phone and called the police, trying to keep my voice steady as I described what was happening. The minutes that followed felt like an eternity. When we finally heard the sound of sirens in the distance, the scratching stopped. The footsteps slowly moved away down the hallway until there was nothing left but the growing sound of the sirens. When the police arrived, they opened the bedroom door and searched the entire house, but of course they found nothing. The only thing out of place was the TV, still on, showing a blank, black screen, as if mocking my attempt to control the situation. The next morning, we didn't think twice. We packed our things and left the house. No matter how much I tried to rationalize, there was something deeply wrong in that place, something that no technology could explain. And the TV, that TV that was supposed to be just another common appliance, was the portal to something I no longer wanted to understand. To this day, whenever I see a TV, I can't help but feel an involuntary shiver. The glow of the screen reminds me of that hooded figure, of the slow footsteps in the hallway, and the scratching on the door. And I wonder, did we really leave that behind? Or are we still being watched somehow, through any random screen, just waiting for the right moment to come back?